Space. The deep, dark unknown. Endless void with no real answers to what lie before it. What does space have to do with OLED TVs? The blacks. Okay? OLED TVs. The blacks are like really, really black. Okay? Bitch. OLED TVs cannot be stopped. Alright? It doesn't matter. You know what OLED TVs and John Cena have in common? Alright? You can't see them! When they're showing all black anyway. And like when you go black, there's no going back. And you might need a wheelchair as well. Because if you try to move in the living room in a dark scene of a movie or like a loading screen on a game, it's just going to be black. You won't be able to see anything and you're going to get injured. Okay, so keep that in mind. Kids these days don't understand how lucky they are. All right, back in my day, we had the fat TVs. All right, we had the LCDs, the plasmas, which we will get to are actually pretty damn sweet. And if you wanted OLED at the time, you had to get janky ass TouchWiz Samsung, all right? I think they started actually with the Galaxy actually, no S. But I really feel like they didn't get good until like around the S7. This is like 2012 era. This is when I was like 14 times 2. I'm 36 years old. But it was hard to get your hands on one of these. And when they were featured on something, it was always a huge deal because it was considered a premium feature, all right? Hell, the iPhone didn't get an OLED until like the 12. But even back then with the Samsungs, like, yeah, you still had the incredible contrast and all that. But you had to deal with this weird, like, low resolution thing. Something to do with how the pixel structure is laid out. It just made it look like dog shit. So that was a bit of a bummer. It was one of those things where you either had good colors and contrast or you wanted your text to be legible. That was your choice back then. I remember I had the S7 Edge and I was a huge fan and I was in love. And then, of course, the Note came out and I was in even more love. And let's not talk about what happened with that. That's not OLED related, although I'm sure it would look awesome on an OLED, seeing one of these things blow up. But yeah, back in my day, we had to have the fat TVs that weighed 99 pounds, incredible motion clarity, so colors, but the form factor just wasn't it. Then my mom upgraded me to an LCD, like a classic LCD. And it was dog shit. The latency was terrible. And fun fact, I was so bad at video games for the longest time. And it was the same for her plasma, which had amazing colors and contrast, by the way. But even worse, display latency was terrible, okay? It was like 100 plus milliseconds. Absolutely gets you chopped, especially when you're putting like 25 days a year in COD at the time. You know, MW2, MW3, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 1. All my homeboys from the Black Ops 1 days, hit the like, please. But yeah, fun fact, I actually got a Moab, an MW3 on my PS3, right? With my aunt's TV in her living room. No surround sound, just stereo, right? And I'm going to 100% accredit that to being on it was still an LCD, but surprisingly it had very low latency. And that must have like unlocked my powers, you know, like I just had the 6 eyes or whatever the hell Gojo has, and it was over for that lobby. I'd have to rip my PS3 out from the cabinet, plug it in, hope to God the hard drive hasn't corrupted by now. But I swear to you, it happened, okay? So that's another thing is latency, but OLEDs are fantastic in that regard, actually having the lowest latency in the entire industry. Now we have devices like the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 coming out in 2017. 2025, right? No OLED from launch. Really? Okay, if you're going to drop 2 versions of the same thing, and then the nicer one is a few years down the line, why don't you just drop them at the same time? Everybody complained, oh, it's $450 for a Switch 2. It's $450 for a Switch 2. Nobody's going to buy this. Fastest selling console of all time. The people want what the people want. And you know what I want? Spell it with me. OLED. OLED everything. OLED supremacy. Forget the infinity stones. I need infinity contrast with my display. The benefits of OLED don't just go to pure image quality as well. We also need to consider gaming. Since CRTs, we have been downhill for gaming in terms of displays. LCDs take forever to transition from color to color. What does this mean? You're playing a game, and even if it's high refresh rate, you're still getting that blur behind, or hell, even with the motion of things moving. A 60 hertz OLED, to my eyes, looks clearer than a 120 hertz LCD panel. So why does any of this matter? Why do OLEDs matter so much to me? And the reality is, if you're going to do something, I'm of the opinion that you should give most of what you have, if not everything, right? It's no fun to half-ass anything. You get out what you put in, right? So if you're sitting around lackadaisically watching a movie, missing half the dialogue, or worse yet, your audio system is set up to where you just can't hear the dialogue, so you got to use subtitles. Then the subtitles are too bright, so then you can't see the Let's not get into that. But if I'm watching a movie or playing a game, listening to music, I want the least amount of barriers between what the creator made and me being able to perceive that. For example, if you were to see like an incredible painting, but it was in front of like a screen door, it had like 5 people standing in the way, stuff like that, you wouldn't be able to appreciate that. And in my eyes, using something like an IPS panel is effectively as good as having a screen door in front of whatever you want to see. And people argue, well, it's only really the dark scenes that you see the improvement. And I would say that is completely false. If it's a sunny day in a game, like let's say Ghost of Yotei, and you go to a shadowy area in the game, you're going to see that greater difference between the dark and bright that is way closer to realism than you would notice in person. There's a greater depth to the image just by the virtue of it having better contrast. It feels less like looking at a screen and more like looking through a window. And it's insane too, because the prices of these things have been dropping like crazy. It used to be, you had to pay $1,300 for my C1 48-inch back in 2021. Now you can get a 55-inch, like a B5 or B6, whatever model LG is on right now, for $600. Walking to Best Buy, okay? This isn't some like crazy sale or anything. I mean, they say it's a sale, but like really it's more like this came out 8 months ago, here's $700 off the price. It's crazy, right? And I never look at the price of what I'm buying. I look at how much I could have paid if I bought it when it first came out, okay? That is a easy way to save a lot of money. Consider that. In the endless sea of slop that you're forced to consume, either with reels or ads, whatever you do, why not treat yourself to the absolute best in quality for the things you actually care about? If you love gaming, if you love movies, if you just love watching YouTube or watching TV, you're still going to see a benefit from using OLED. And hey, that pricier investment is going to last. A fantastic image now is still going to look incredible 5 or even 10 years from now. Only difference is it might be kind of dim versus, like the HDR standards then are probably going to be insane, like eye-searingly bright. And don't leave a static image on the screen for 10 hours a day for years, or you will continue to see that whenever you watch anything else. That is the only disclaimer with OLED. Been using them for years, and I've never had issues with my use case. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer. So if you can, squeeze the budget a little more, get an OLED, experience what you love in the best way possible. I'm starting to get addicted to this. So in the endless sea of slop, in the